Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Stickle. I'm also joined by my colleague Jim Patterson. Jim will be today's presenter and will discuss the topic of program and project financial management in an adaptive project portfolio management world. This webinar is a new addition to our diverse library of project and portfolio management videos we have available on YouTube and our website. So if you enjoy this webinar, we welcome you to watch the other videos we have available there. And as always, I hope that today's presentation grants you some insight into the world of project and portfolio management and gets you excited for the new developments happening within the industry and here at OnePlan. Thank you again. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thanks, Robert. Welcome, everybody. Today's topic really covers the financial aspects of project and portfolio management and even the program management level. A fundamental concept and discipline within overall project and portfolio management. And the dimensions of where things are going with project portfolio management in the adaptive world, as we'll define a little bit later on, adds another dimension to this, that we need solutions to help us navigate and accommodate these changes and evolutions in the discipline. So with that, let's get started. So project portfolio management as a discipline has different areas and disciplines and aspects where financials really permeate throughout. Overall, there's the concept of budgets within projects and portfolios. Even up front, as we're evaluating what we want to work on, the pipeline or intake management that has to happen involves the process of estimating, requesting capital investment, and aligning things with strategic plans and properly weighting those things from a financial perspective. So there's a financial dimension even pre-project. Overall resource management. We talk about labor and other materials and things, but there are financial resources that need to be ascertained, and there's constraints on those as well. Even when we do change control in the active life cycle of a project, we have to do these things and evaluate changes and whether or not we can do them within the financial and operational constraints of individual projects and of our organizations. Do we have the money and the financials to do that? And just general financial management and project portfolio management really incorporates, establishing the value of projects. What are they going to cost and what are we going to get for those things? What's the organization's going to benefit on those from a financial perspective? The financial controls that we put in place to manage throughout the life cycle of the active project. And even the measurements, things like earned value or something comparable that helps to ascertain where we're at and are we going to finish on time, or other project financial techniques that we might use are all in that whole financial management realm. Even when we do risk management and we look at potential risks that we have to manage or evaluate, we're probably looking at cost impact as one of those things that we have to assess on what our exposure is in that area as well. And if you look at the diagram on the right, financials aren't just managed at the individual project level. They can be managed and looked at from an overall program perspective when we have program management with multiple projects within a program, and even from an overall portfolio perspective, all the way leading up to managing financials across the entire organization that we're looking at. So there's different tiers where we can assess and manage these things. Now, what is project cost and financial management? Well, it is a key dimension of project constraint and performance measurement in the project and portfolio management dimension. Back when the PMBOK had its knowledge areas, it was one of the key knowledge areas that was part of that. And even as people are moving to more scaled, agile, and lean portfolio management techniques, these disciplines also provide for budgets with guardrails. So financials is something that needs to be considered, even though it may be managed using a different approach. And financial management has that planning cost management up front, as we can overall manage the costs and plan for things like in our annual plans and initial portfolio planning, down to the project of estimating the individual costs within those projects, and then agreeing to and determining a budget that we're going to manage to within those things. And then in the active life cycle, constantly controlling those costs. Now, it's an iterative process where we estimate the costs, we develop a budget, and then we control spending. So if you look at that in the diagram on the right, we plan, we estimate, we then assess a budget, we track, we see where we're at, we assess. If we have variations, we have to make corrective actions, and then we have to maybe replan and then manage across those different cycles as we go on through. Now, project financial management can happen in a number of different fashions. The more top-down financial is really kind of project or program level budgeting and tracking. We might have high-level financial categories and cost types. We might have time-phased financial values about how this is going to flow cash-wise over the course of a project. And we would incorporate generally labor and non-labor costs as to the total cost of performing on this project. There's also an approach of bottom-up financials, where you might actually do this on an individual task level within your project schedules, where you have costs associated with those tasks, maybe resources assigned to those tasks, and those resources have rates to those. And then they roll up through those tasks, through the project, up to the programs and up through the portfolios from a bottom-up perspective. But this does require maintenance of data at a much more granular level of detail. And many organizations are using a combined approach where the top-down is what's used early on in the process, because that's all the information we have. But then when we have more detailed plans and schedules, they may do bottom-up to understand where they're at and how it's rolling out and how the actual things are happening on the ground. And then you can compare to those early assumptions on that top-down assumption with more current information as you go through the process. So the idea is it's really about what you need to do and what you're able to sustain as an organization from a level of granularity and rigor. Now, a complete solution financially would have a standard integrated and logical approach for doing all of this: developing, estimating, selecting, approving, and monitoring the investments. You'd have a single source of truth for overall early portfolio planning and budgeting, be able to do requests and approvals that factor in those financials, be able to do capital budgeting so that we can manage our precious capital dollars moving forward and allocate those in a way that best serves the organization, and have a CapEx approval process in the mix. And then individual project to be able to do forecasting of where we're going to end up or what the current landscape looks like, where we're going, and do the forecasting, tracking, and reporting so that we can take corrective actions and make decisions along the way. Now, all of that has happened in project management disciplines for many, many years. This concept of adaptive project and portfolio management adds another dimension to this. So what is that? Well, first of all, let's talk about how different methodologies and frameworks are being used to manage projects. Agile approaches as organizations digitally transform and try to become more agile. Agile as an approach is growing, but waterfall approaches that have been traditionally used are still widely used across many organizations. And there's agile variants or hybrid methodologies that people come up with, and come up with names like Scrumfall and things like that, where it's a combination of the two. And many people aren't purists when it comes to these disciplines. They may have personalized or cherry-picked versions that take portions of what these methodologies approach and use those because that's what fits them the best, meets them where they're at. Now, organizations today have increasing pressure to become more agile. And if you think about this diagram, looking at it from the right over to the left, traditional project and portfolio management with a more waterfall and traditional governance process is over in the green on the right. And some organizations actually are striving to become fully agile, moving all the way over to the left in that dark blue, and to do everything in an agile fashion, from portfolio management on through execution. Now, to make that journey often takes years on an agile transformation. And so whether it be just a stop along the way on your journey, or as many analysts are saying, this is where most organizations end up, is in this adaptive portfolio management realm, where you have some combination of agile, waterfall, or hybrids in there. And neither approach is going to dominate waterfall or agile, and it's going to be dependent on the nature of the work, the type of the projects and initiatives that are being worked. So today, we're going to focus on the dimension of adaptive portfolio management in that context. Now, adaptive PPM is more than about agile versus waterfall. Adaptive is saying, hey, we have maybe more than a project portfolio to manage. We might have an IT service portfolio. We might have an overall program portfolio or internal initiatives like transformation programs. We might have a product portfolio that has project and resources that are needed to fulfill on those things. So many portfolios could be in the mix beyond just the traditional operational project portfolio. And it might have to support teams that use a wide variety of tools, provide visibility across all of it, a single source of truth, and basically consolidate information maybe from a variety of different data sources, just to name a few of the things that adaptive might incorporate. So in this adaptive world, we're going to talk today about, in OnePlan, the idea of maybe using mixed methodologies, some projects, initiatives that may have more iterative approaches, some that may have more waterfall approaches, and they may be using different tools. They might be using agile tools like Azure DevOps or Jira, or maybe using more waterfall tools like Microsoft Project. And different constituencies may be executing using those things, but at the higher levels, we need to be able to aggregate these portfolios into, say, programs and individual portfolios, and even rolled up to strategies and aligned with different strategies and objectives within the organization. The key here is that teams, to be effective, need to have the proper tools and approaches that are most conducive to the projects that they're working, but leadership still needs the visibility it needs in the increments and the components and entities that they need to see it in. And this doesn't change even if everybody gets to be fully agile. Just say for a moment that somebody does go fully agile and is doing everything all iterative. Maybe they roll it up a little different through programs and things like value streams, for example. But for example, the teams may be executing with a different language. They may be looking at things like burn ups, burn downs, velocity charts, etc., where leadership is still maybe talking about the language of the business, maybe more financial orientation on things like return on investment, what's the burn or the spend, NPV and internal rate of return. They may be looking at things like that to manage the overall cost in a business perspective. And the idea is to be able to provide each of these stakeholders or constituencies with what they need in order to do their jobs. And OnePlan is designed to do that. OnePlan is really designed to provide that portfolio level capability, connecting strategy all the way down to the execution level. And here we're using very Microsoft-oriented examples of saying, you might have people using their new project for the web to manage their projects. They might be using the traditional Microsoft Project Professional on the desktop. They might be using Azure DevOps or a Jira even to do agile projects. And the idea is, how do you harness all these things that are diverse and siloed and bring them all together? And that's what OnePlan is designed to do. Even though OnePlan can do these things and do that planning and scheduling internally within and of itself without these other tools. Now, OnePlan Capabilities, definitely portfolio visibility that we talked about in the adaptive realm, where we can have traditional portfolio list views, maybe with timelines. We have board views for the more agile-oriented people that can look at the portfolio from a flexible set of board parameters with different columns and swim lanes for the cards. And even roadmap views, very popular with more product-oriented types of folks that want to look at roadmaps of how things are going, and dependencies across all those, and even what-if scenarios, as we'll talk about today. Now, resource capacity planning, consistent across all your projects, regardless of the methodology you're using, is something that OnePlan accommodates. And the resourcing that you do in here and the cost and the rates associated with those resources can actually drive labor costs in your financial plan, but you can have detailed financial plans with the cost categorization that aligns with the way your business looks at costs, or potentially even the way you want to align it with your financial systems, and be able to have that capability brought to bear right within OnePlan. Now, the execution side from the bottom up, definitely the ability to do, as you see on the left, more waterfall type work plans, or on the right, looking at more agile plans where you're looking at a backlog or maybe your cards for more sprint-based planning, and consistent status reporting across all that, because it's all converging into a common solution here in OnePlan. Now, optionally, you can bring your waterfall plans in from other tools like Planner, Project, or agile plans in from Azure DevOps or Jira, and then really bring it together into a common context to get access and visibility and do all of your planning from a portfolio level right here within OnePlan. Now, team members can actually participate in this as well, seeing all their assignments all in one place with a My Work area or a home page that gives them easy access to the things that involve them. Even timesheets, as we want to look at actuals, because those actuals can impact what we're doing with financials as well. So in OnePlan, we have a dedicated financial planner as one aspect or one capability within the portfolio management realm. We can integrate the top-down project financials that basically give you that portfolio visibility from portfolio views like you see on the top, that are being derived from the detailed financial plans like you see at the bottom screen within this depiction. It allows you to streamline the budgeting process, have flexibility and visibility, and also be able to accommodate some top-down and bottoms-up planning together. And it allows you some full financial management controls like detailed categorization of costs, financial roll-ups in a flexible way, analytics and estimating. provide the PMO with financial transparency, even rolled up to the portfolio views, and also potentially be able to link investments to strategies or to projects or products and other portfolios in an adaptive realm, which will help result in higher returns and better decision-making on getting business value for the organization. Now, we talked about the resource planning, and what's nice about this is you can do your resource capacity planning from a top-down or a bottom-up perspective, and the rates associated with these resources can be used to derive the financials from a labor perspective without having to duplicate that effort. It gives you time phase costing and allow you to do that as a derivative of the resource plan, as opposed to doing labor costs twice, one from a cost perspective and one from an effort perspective. Now, the financial planner also includes these additional capabilities: financial visibility across multiple portfolios if you have more than one, details at multiple levels. We'll show you in the demonstration today at the project level, at the program level, et cetera, at the portfolio level. Time phase costing for integrated planning and tracking, a financial planner with a flexible cost category structure that you define, and then multiple cost types where you might have an original budget, you might have revised forecasts, you might have actuals, you might even forecast revenue or benefits that you want to track and have even benefit realization there. And then financial reporting that's a natural output out of this data, and even pivot analysis capability right within OnePlan, that you can do some pivot table types of analysis right within here for the data that you enter in OnePlan. Now, the what if scenarios allow us to combine visibility into the portfolio or prospective portfolio, be able to prioritize and select projects, and then actually look at financial constraints and try to balance the selection and the timing of the projects with the ability to provide dollars against these projects and fit within budgets. We can save different options as scenarios and look at a heat map to see whether or not we're fitting within all these budgets and targets within that. We also have added just recently a new OnePlan Modeler to expand this what if scenario capability to be able to save different scenario models for, say, different business units or programs or departments, whatever it might be, and apply constraints and targets for each of those models. And then be able to view initiatives based on those constraints as what made the cut, what's in, what's out as far as projects and initiatives, and then even compare a litany of scenarios that you may have put together to see which one might be the best one for you to choose. So from a benefit perspective, it's really devising a portfolio that strategically aligns and maximizes the benefits within the constraints of the organization. So you feed this optimization model with resource and financial constraints. You can force mandatory and pre-approved projects in and choose what to select in there, and model what if scenarios to compare alternative portfolios. And then you can formalize this by, putting this into your ongoing process and do this on an iterative ongoing basis. Then analytics and reporting as a natural output of this, pre-built reports as part of this process. Whether it be at different levels, you could have portfolio level financials, program level financials, or even project specific financials as part of the mix. And OnePlan has an integration platform called OneConnect, specifically for OnePlan, that integrates with your financial system as well as other tool sets as well. So OnePlan also allows you to stay working in the tools. I'm going to show it to you just using it in a browser today, but then we're also going to show it, let you know that OnePlan can be used within the context of Power Apps. It can be used in the context of Teams, because it is actually a OnePlan authorized Teams application. And it's also in Azure DevOps. So we can actually use it within the context of Azure DevOps in an adaptive world, also within Dynamics and within SharePoint. So let's get into a demonstration and show you how these things work in action. So in OnePlan, we actually have, I'm showing you here a flat portfolio of projects right here. And if you notice here on the left, there are different plan types, projects and epics that might delineate more agile projects versus more waterfall type projects, and even links to other tools that might be bringing data in for those particular projects. So in an adaptive realm, we're bringing these all together. Notice some of these have no icons at all here, which indicate that it's all being managed strictly here within OnePlan itself. So as we do that and we look at this, we can group this by whatever metadata or categorizations we want. I could come in here and say, let me summarize and group these by business unit and see what projects are going on within product development and what that total in the financial realm might be. Look at our different maybe categories of projects and see that we have, application development projects and what's going on within those, as well as other ones, as well as counts of those projects. And even understanding who's managing these things. Maybe go down here and say, metadata on, what projects is Daniel Williams managing and how are those doing across the board, across all those projects. You are not limited in any way on how you would categorize and put metadata against these projects. Now, we also have plan type hierarchies. So for example, if I go in here and I notice I got projects and epics, but notice that I have a hierarchy where there's programs that these projects and epics fall within, and those programs fall within portfolios. So let's say, for example, I come in and want to look at more of a portfolio summary view. Notice I've got portfolios or two major portfolios in here. And as I expand this out, you'll notice that I have programs within these portfolios. And then within the individual programs, I actually have projects and initiatives and epics within those that allow me to create a hierarchy for our portfolio. Now, the benefit of this over having just metadata, the metadata may be ways you slice across this, but a program as an entity within this, or a portfolio as an entity, allows us to do other things like have budgets against the program or against the portfolio and roll up data into those specific areas in different ways that you can't do just by doing a slice via some metadata. So be aware that there's advantages to doing that. Now, if I want to drill into a specific project, for example, in the mix here, like this social networking integration, I can either drill into the project itself or I can drill into specific areas like financials or a work plan or whatever it might be. Let's start by drilling into the work plan for this particular project. And as I drill into the work plan, it's going to bring up a number of different things. Just like I have different plan types at the portfolio level, I have a schedule work type here that allows me to build waterfall plans. And if I expand this out, notice that I have a detailed waterfall plan. I can show it with or without a Gantt chart representation if I like. And the key there would be is I can build this right in here from a template or from scratch, or I could actually use other tools. If you have connectors enabled for things like Project for the Web, Planner, or Project Professional, optionally you can bring your data in from those if you have planning data already built in those. So you have the flexibility of where this data is going to come from and mapping in the data that you might want to use. And you might even have more cost level data in here and financial data at the individual task level, like we talked in the bottoms up approach, that you might want to roll up to the project. Now, I could also have in here what we call a backlog work type, in addition to things like issues, risks, changes, and key decisions, or others you might want to add. In the backlog work type, you might want to structure a more agile approach. In this case, I'm looking at, if I expand this out, I have features and user stories that are in here that allow me to build this from a more agile perspective, use maybe story points and or effort hours if you like, and even be able to come into here and leverage sprint-based plans and actually allocate these things to different sprints, et cetera. And once again, you could either build those things directly here in OnePlan or leverage things like a connector to Azure DevOps or to Jira to bring that data in on an ongoing basis from those. So once again, the adaptive piece here is you could have a combination of Agile, a combination of waterfall, a combination of different tools feeding in, both from a waterfall and an Agile perspective, feeding these things in. Now, given that, and you can bring this all into a common forum, if I want to start looking at the financial plan that's available for each of my projects, notice here that I've got views in here that allow me to look at a variety of different things. So for example, if I was going to come in and say, look at an individual budget, I can set my types in here, cost types, where I might have a budget, I might have a revised forecast, I might have actuals, I might have benefits or revenue. And I can set my time horizon in here. So notice I'm looking at just this current year. I can set whether or not I want to look at months or quarters or years. I can get this down to even, weekly increments. But the idea is I can set the horizon. And if you notice here, I've actually got some grayed out areas that show what time horizon is outside the current realm of this project, just for a help on the visual. I've also got the ability to delineate these categories between CapEx and OpEx. and I can group and summarize these things by that CapEx and OpEx designation as I go through here to further supplement what we have in this cost category structure, working out the costs. Now, it works like a spreadsheet. As I mentioned, the labor costs could be coming in from your resource plan. I've also got these different cells where I can work with these things here in the in individual cells and just enter, update data in these areas from a financial perspective. And then I can even compare things. So let's say, for example, I have a budget and I have a revised forecast or I have actuals. I can actually come in here and compare, for example, the budget versus the actuals. And as I come in here and I can look at any given point in time and see I budgeted $23,200 in May, and my actuals are only at $10,000, meaning I'm underspending for that month, or I've underspent for that month. Where I looked out here in June and I see that I thought I was only going to spend $51,000 and I spent $105,000. So whatever that cost structure is, and the way we compare those things, we can look at these things in these regards, and even look at things like specific variances. So if I wanted to go look at, you know, a specific variance value on those things, I can come in and look at that same view and look at it from a perspective of what the actual variances is and see whether that's a red, yellow, or a green. And we can supplement this with different reporting and such. And the actuals that we're comparing to, you know, might be here in an actuals table, and looking at the actuals that come in that can be entered in here by just, you know, fat fingering in the data. But it can also be connected from your financial system with our connector platform. So if you have data that you'd like to bring here on a regular basis and map it to a cost category or a cost center structure that you have, that can be done. As well as the labor actuals can be coming in from our timesheet system right here within OnePlan. Now, as we go through here and we look at things like, you know, our budget and our dollar values in here that you see up here that are totaling from a detailed budget plan here. If I go to the details page for a project, you'll see a few things. You'll see that we have a project financial section in here. And by the way, this is configurable so you can have the data in here that you want. But notice the budget value that summarizes from the detailed plan is here. The forecast data that's rolling up, the actuals data, the remaining budget, et cetera. And even things like on benefits and return on investment. And the bottoms up data from the work plan can be coming in here from as well. So the top down and the bottoms up. And these values can also be surfaced in those portfolio financial views like I showed you earlier on. So if I go back to the portfolio, for example, and I take a look at, say, instead of this particular view, let's say I go into a summary financial, project summary financial view. As we go into that particular view, you can then surface these financial values that have line item details supporting them rolled up to these particular views in this forecast, budget, forecast, actuals, remaining, benefits, etc., or whatever other cost types that you want to put in. Different people have additional ones that they put into here, or maybe not use all of these, but the idea there is it's flexible enough to add what you want in order to help make those decisions. The other part of it is that you can do these at different levels. So as I mentioned, these projects and epics belong to different programs. If I wanted to look at a program financial summary view, what you'll see here is that these program levels is now we have all of this data rolled up to a program level, you know, from the individual programs and the individual projects that are in here, and get easy summarization right into the mix here, you know, from those financial views. And if I go into, for example, the details at the program level, and I showed you the details originally at the individual project level, right? If I go into the details level, what you'll see in here is that we have associations with different initiatives and projects. But notice that you got maybe a program budget overall, that you have different projects that are rolling up into here saying that the project budgets far exceed the program budget in this case, and we're actually overspent by quite a bit here because of what's rolling up from the individual projects. Now, this is a case that is a little bit extreme. And if I go into another one, for example, and look at this Improve Infrastructure program, same case on the details here. If I look down below, here's all the projects that are associated or initiatives that are associated with this. Also notice there's objectives or strategies that this is aligned with as well. So we get some strategic alignment here. But then as I go up here, I can see the picture of how those things are rolling up from a project financial perspective and how they are decrementing from the overall program budget, and seeing whether we're in the mix and what benefits we're achieving or expected to achieve from those. Once again, we have data to make financial decisions and to track as we go through. Now, how do we leverage this from a decision-making perspective? Well, if I go back to the portfolio and I go back to a project prioritization view, you can have all kinds of scoring options in here. So for example, in this case, we're using a more business driver model where you can select for your different projects, like how well this is strategically aligned. Is it well strategically aligned or not at all? It's going to help us lower costs, so you might have increased revenue, improve employee retention. Is it going to reduce risk? And the idea is there's calculated formulas behind here that drive a prioritization score based upon your selections here. If you have a prioritization mechanism or formula or structure that you use today, it can be configured here, not customized, but configured within OnePlan, so that your model, which you might be using in a spreadsheet today, can help derive the prioritization scoring that you want across the board. Okay. Now, if I also want to force rank, now these are ranked from top to bottom by prioritization score at this point, but that isn't always what rules the day. For example, you can have a forced ranking that, if you notice in this forced ranking, it's not in prioritization score order, where someone can decide by either regulatory or whatever prerogative by leadership that you want to raise things up in the prioritization order. You can do that and come up with an actual forced rank over here that you see on the right that helps us put something together that factors in things that are out of our control or things that are mandatory, rather than whether or not it's just value based. So a lot of flexibility in the way that you would actually structure those. Now, from a financial what if perspective, you could take this proposed portfolio and you can actually say, show us the financial requirements down below there. And let me put the timeline maybe a little bit more into order here and scale it down a little bit. And so as you look at this and you look at this forced ranking order, and we look at the budget that we have in here, and let's just look at it from a year perspective, I can see the good news here is that within the budget year, I have a budget of $10 million, and this is only going to take me $8,300,000 to do it, meaning the proposed portfolio I have can be done within the financial constraints we have. That's a good thing to have. Now, oftentimes that's not the case. And then sometimes we might have to go down to the lower levels of this forced ranking and say, well, if we needed to get this dollar number down of this $8.3 million, if we had to do that, you might do a couple things. You might maybe deselect a couple projects, and that deselection might take us down to another level. This gets us down to $7.8 million. So if our budget was $8 million, this would have gotten us down to where we were below that. Now, as we do this, we might even consider, like proposed projects, saying we'd like to do it. We don't want to deselect it. Maybe we just want to move it out. And let's say, just to put the extreme case, let's say I want to drag this out and move this project out into the next fiscal year. By moving this out to the next fiscal year, it's actually going to remove that from the overall mix here as far as the calculation, and then get it down to another level below that as we fit this into within the budget constraints. So with the combination of selection and time phasing of the projects, we can look at these as scenarios or alternatives without impacting the source data of this, and save different scenarios which we can compare. So in that regard, you can look at this from both a resource constraint perspective, or you can look at it from a financial constraint perspective or a resource constraint perspective, and see what it's going to take, and do we have the resources or the costs to do these projects at those particular points in time. Now, I mentioned the new modeler, and this allows us to take this what if capabilities and take it to another level. For example, notice I have a register of all these different scenarios or models that I put together. And I've now grouped them by different product areas, or department areas or business unit areas within the company. And within IT, you could have any number of scenario models. In this case, we have IT 2022 planning. Let me drill into that. And as I drill into that, let me go open up a particular scenario. So let me look at a $20 million scenario, budget scenario. And in this scenario, I'm not going to go through it from scratch, but you can select the projects that go into the model by criteria. And in this particular case, what we found out through selection and deselection is that the projects that were in here, the ones that don't make the mix, whether it be from prioritization or from force ranking and selection, is basically saying, these are the projects that we can get done within this $20 million budget. Here we're just at 19 point something underneath that $20 million budget. And the key there is that, you know, you can set different criteria, which I'll show you in a second as we try to fit within those budgets. Now, let's just say we have a $25 million budget scenario and saying, what if we could get another $5 million? In this particular case, what you'll notice that we have a lot more projects that make the in, from like 77 or 79 up to 94 projects that are in, and fewer projects that don't have to be done, if we can find that. And also we get more benefits for that. And as we compare these, maybe we can look and see the difference between that. Is it worth the additional investment? So if I analyze and compare this, what you can see is that through the targets, and look at these targets here, to basically saying, if we were targeting $20 million or $25 million through the constraints, what you can see here in each of these two different scenarios is that there's a total budget that we have to fit within. In this case, we've got effort that we're trying to fit within, and one of them doesn't fit within the budget, the committed effort, so we'd have to find more resources to do that with. But if we look at the targeted benefits, is that over here, we're seeing that in that $20 million scenario, we were trying to get $50 million worth of benefits, but we only got $43 million worth of benefit out of that $20 million investment. Now, for an additional $5 million investment, we can get that another $10 million higher, which is at $53.5 million, which exceeds our target of $50 million worth of benefits. And as we start comparing this, if this list starts getting longer and we have more scenarios we can compare different criteria in here. Or we can run additional scenarios that set different targets on things like budget, on committed effort, or on targeted benefits and things like that. So the idea is you can run an unlimited number of scenarios and make decisions based upon the information that's in here. Now, the reporting that we can get out of something like this is important as well. If I go back to our portfolio and I look at dashboards, I can come in here and look at this portfolio summary. And in this case, this is portfolio level financial information. And here I'm looking at the different portfolios that we have and how they roll up into an aggregate of all the portfolios. If I drill in through a particular program, let's say I drill into the cloud and mobile first program portfolio. Now I'm looking at just this portfolio. I'm looking at financial data for the actual programs within that portfolio, right? And in that, I can then drill into, for example, maybe just a financial view on this and look at just strictly a financial perspective on this particular portfolio with set of programs. And I could even drill further into a specific program, for example, and say, what about this, world-class customer support program? And then we drill into different levels of detail where within this program, I now look at the projects and epics that were in here and the financial specific data that we have in there, let alone the old execution data we have in here on what we've got coming up as far as things like milestones and, overdue tasks and what's been completed and risks and issues and things like that. But today's message on financials is we can get financial reporting at whatever level of detail makes sense for you and your organization. So with that, let me end there and let's talk about some summarization and some next steps. So today we talked about financial management as a critical success factor for PPM success, that costs need to be planned, estimated, and budgeted and tracked for project success. Unfortunately, many organizations are still using disconnected spreadsheets in a manual process to do this, and it's not tied in with the rest of the portfolio of information. But OnePlan provides a great platform to tie all this together for all PPM capabilities under one umbrella. It provides visibility into a centralized organization-wide view of projects, programs, and portfolio financials. It also provides all aspects of top-down financial planning and bottom-up. It also aligns financial plans with organizational strategies. We didn't dive into that much today, but in the strategic portfolio management realm, we can have strategic portfolios or an execution and align our projects with those. We also can get consistent financial information across diverse methodologies and tools, which means we normalize that in one method right here within OnePlan itself. And this is fully integrated and embedded in the Microsoft Cloud. It leverages your own Azure Active Directory that you use for Office 365 and Microsoft 365 for authentication. So it's single sign-on for what you're already doing. And as I mentioned, you can leverage it within the context of Teams or Power Apps or even your favorite browser. And the OneConnect platform integrates with existing financial applications. So if you want to bring in the actuals, for example, from your financial system, that's very, very achievable and very easily with that connector platform. Now, we are a Microsoft Gold certified partner, and we're not a general systems integrator. Our passion is project and portfolio management. We have a lot of different gold certifications from Microsoft, but as you can see here, we won their global PPM Project and Portfolio Management Partner of the Year 3 of the last 4 years, and we were the runner-up in the 1 year that we didn't win it. So we get recognized by Microsoft, as well as on the right, you can see by the analysts like Gartner and Infotech Research, our thought leadership and our achievements in this area. We do, in that thought leadership area, we do webinars like this almost on a weekly basis. We've got some stuff coming up here. Next week, we're doing one is strategic portfolio management, the future of PPM, and how OnePlan provides a crawl, walk, run approach to this evolution. We're going to take a little break around the Thanksgiving to holiday for doing these webinars, but we actually have 2 webinars going on December 8th. One is more industry focused in biotech and pharma and how strategic portfolio management can be accomplished there. And as part of Microsoft's webinar series, we're actually doing one on lessons learned from customers who actually deployed this stuff and leveraged their project for the web accelerator with OnePlan in there to really get the robust solution that they're looking for. So if you're interested in any of those, just go to oneplan.ai/webinars and register for this if you're interested. We also offer free trials. So if you want to try OnePlan out, we have a number of different templates for trials that you can use with some sample data. If you look in the bottom row, in the third one there, we have an adaptive portfolio management one that would align very well with what we talked about here with adaptive. Or if you want something that incorporates the strategic portfolio management and the strategic alignment more completely, that strategic portfolio management template that you see at the top is one that you might want to try. Go to appsource.com in Microsoft, and you can get your trial enabled there. And we're happy to support you and chaperone you through that trial process. We also, if you're not that far to do this hands-on, you want to understand what it takes to get into these technologies, we can do a free roadmap workshop, understand where you're at, where you want to get to, and help you develop a roadmap and understand the costs of what it might be to get there. Because we leverage Microsoft technology, you may already own a good chunk of what you already need, and this might just be an incremental investment for you. So the free trial, which we're happy to help you with, the roadmap workshop, which we would love to engage with you on, or if you're not even that far, if you are interested in what you saw in this generalized demo today, we're happy to schedule a more personalized one with you one-on-one that addresses your specific pain points and requirements and use cases. So, feel free to engage with us. We'd love to engage with you. You can reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai as the general contact. You can investigate us more at oneplan.ai on the web. And you could also reach out to me individually if you want to talk further about this. We'd like to thank you for spending your time out of your valuable day here today. Our motto is that we are invested in success, and by that means we're invested in our customers' success. And so we'd love to engage with you and help you get there and make those incremental improvements in the way that you're doing your project and portfolio management. So thank you for your time today, and have a great day.